What's going on, Falcon fans? This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. So today, guys, we're going to talk about the direction the Atlanta Falcons should take in this offseason. Um, it's many ways to look at this. It depends on how this new regime view this Atlanta Falcons team. From most of the people, and a lot of us as well, we feel like this team is not far away from competing for the NFC South, which will put you into the playoffs. So, but how do this new regime, Matt Ryan, Ian Cunningham, Kevin Stefanski, how they view this team, and do they believe this team is right at the doorstep? And with that thought process, do they believe that they can make certain moves to get them over the proverbial hump, or do they think this team is somewhere still in the rebuilding stage, or not not as close as you would like, and they want to be in this thing for the long haul and build a team up the right way? So those are some of the things you definitely got to think about when you're thinking about um, the directions. What's going on, T Terry? The direction the Atlanta Falcons should be considering going into this new year in 2026. We'll definitely get into that today. I got a couple points that I want to, cover and go over, and just give my thoughts to it, and definitely want to hear from you guys, get your thoughts as well. With that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. Please hit the like buttons. I know you guys like to hear I talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people come hear me talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So guys, like I said, what's going on, Eddie? Um, um, so the whole thought process is, you know, potential offseason moves, what the Atlanta Falcons could do, and you can look at it in, you know, like I said, the two different ways, right? If you believe this team is right on the edge, right? Their floor is higher than most people think. I mean, honestly, they tied with the same record as the division champs this season, so they're right there. You want to look at it like that, or you believe that you know because the quarterback is still uncertain, you want to build a team up, in a different way, and try to build through the draft and get younger and all those kind of things. And Chicago Bears, for an example, it took them 4 seasons to get to where the point they was last year, where they was able to have one of the best seasons they had in a long time. Do Ian Cunningham look at the Atlanta Falcons situation come to, which I don't think that's the case. I think Atlanta Falcons is way far ahead, than the Chicago Bears team was when Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles went in there, 4 years ago. But at the same time, we still have uncertainty at quarterback position, you know, and it's a whole new regime, right? We got the whole front office is pretty much new, even not to the head coach. Only person that's probably familiar is the defensive coordinator, from the last regime. So those are some of the things when you looking at the potential moves the Atlanta Falcons probably could consider this year, just what the direction they want to go in. My personal belief, my side is on that they're not that far away. And to me today, that's the way I'm gonna look at it, and kind of approach this whole idea of looking at offseason potential offseason moves that Atlanta Falcons could take. The rumor mill you've been hearing about some of the Atlanta Falcons potential moves that they could do, um, and how will some of these things affect the way the Atlanta Falcons is going to be moving forward. So that's the way I'm approaching today, and I want you guys to go along with me and on that journey. So to you said not only competing for the NFC South, but a deep playoff run. Yes. So you're thinking the same way I'm thinking when I think about what the Atlanta Falcons potentially be this year. But let's start here, and it's all about the quarterbacks, right? It's all about the quarterbacks, right? It's all about the quarterbacks, and it's always going to be about the quarterback, guys. I mean, you have to have competent quarterback play. Uh, Listen, I did not say great quarterback play. I did not say, you know, you know. Hall of Fame, quality quarterback play. I said good quarterback play. You have to have that, right? We have seen teams win the Super Bowl with good quarterback play. It's just that's the fact. You have seen it. So it's not, you know, out of the ordinary. We saw Nick Foles win, right? We saw Nick Foles. We saw Trent Dilford. We saw Brad Johnson. Some guys that probably never going to snip the Hall of Fame, but they had a great run in the playoffs to get those guys into to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, and nobody can ever take that from those guys are quarterback Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. That's what they got to their name. So um, that's what I'm saying when I talk about quarterbacks. When we talk about the quarterbacks potentially for Atlanta Falcons, so let's go down the rumor mill first of all. Um, we keep hearing the name Malik Willis, right? And this is where, like, sometimes I feel like the NFL is not serious, right? When they say Malik Willis, right? Malik Willis has 6 starts. That's it. 6 starts. And he 3-3 in those starts. He 2-1 to Green Bay, 1-2 the Tennessee Titans, right? He had 6 starts in his whole NFL career, and he's the most coveted quarterback in free agency. And I just don't see how that's possible when you got a quarterback that got 12 starts and has showed more than what Malik Willis have shown, because he only had 6 starts, right? And he 3-3, 500. Michael Penix 4-8, right? So I'm just trying to understand why teams would be so coveted of Malik Willis after just 6 starts in his entire career, because he's is an unknown as well. And we're talking about people paying him $30 million a year. I just don't understand that. And so that's why it kind of, you know, I need some understanding. If somebody can help me understand how a guy plays 6 games and all of a sudden he's the most coveted guy on the market. And I'm not saying he potentially be really good, and he showed some flashes, but it was only 6 games, right? It's only 6 games, and everybody knows when you don't have tape on a guy and you don't know how they're going to run their offense off of it, it's kind of easier to have success, because you catching everybody off guard. He only got 6 starts in his whole NFL career, and people want to give him $30 million a year, right? And most people want to give up on Michael Penix Jr. after just 12 starts. It's crazy to me, and I don't understand it. People try to make it sense to me. I get it. He had 6 games, and really he had 2 good games in Green Bay, maybe 3. I guess you could say because he did lose 1, but he's 2-1 in Green Bay, 1-2 in Tennessee, and everybody's ready to go ahead and freaking make him a $30 million quarterback. That is crazy to me. I like I said, that's why sometimes you be like, is the NFL, is the league serious, right? Like, think about it. We had Shadur Sanders play 4 years of college, right? At the highest completion percentage in NFL history, right? Um, and nobody didn't. All that film he had out there, all that film he had, and nobody wanted to take him. He was a unfinished project and everything, and he got drafted in the 5th round, right? Um, Malik Willis been in the league for what, 4 seasons, had 6 starts, and now everybody want to pay him $30 million. I don't understand how these teams evaluate quarterbacks. I'm just being honest. I don't get it. I'm so confused about it. So Malik Willis is a room right there, and they're saying that the Atlanta Falcons should, go after that, right? And I'm like, why should they go after that? He's just as unproven as Michael Penix is, right? I don't get it. I just don't understand that. The other name people have been talking about is Mac Jones, right? Mac Jones. Now, Mac Jones is probably one of the most proven quarterbacks out there, But then the Atlanta Falcons would have to consider the trade for him. And what would that garner for the Atlanta Falcons in trying to go ahead and trade for a Mac Jones, right? And then the question is, what is Mac Jones' ceiling? Is Mac Jones' ceiling higher than Michael Penix Jr.? You don't know, right? So you're trading for a guy because if you trade for him, you're pretty much saying that Michael Penix is done, right? That's why I look at it. 'Cause Mac Jones is young enough to potentially be the next franchise quarterback for somebody, but now you're just pretty much giving up on your other quarterback that you still don't you're still unsure about. So what I'm saying is that the what's the philosophies here for quarterbacks? And I'm not saying this with Atlanta Falcons. It's just a rumor mill that's out there about these quarterbacks: Malik Willis, Mac Jones. I even heard Anthony Richardson name. Right, Anthony Richardson met with the leadership with Indianapolis, and they agreed that it's best for him to find a different location. Right, and in that case, they think about trying to trade for him. Now, interesting thing about Anthony Richardson, he's only 23 years old, so he's young. So I could see the potential of bringing a guy in that still has time to develop. Right, he's young. He's only 23, so I guess I could see Anthony Richardson. He has so much raw talent, but he has not developed at all. Um, and first of all, I don't understand why they took him number 4 overall because I did not see that anyway. But um, so when we talk about quarterbacks, right? So now we get those guys out because those are three big names that everybody been talking about. But then you have so many other veteran quarterbacks out there. You got a Russell Wilson, you got a Jimmy Garoppolo, um, you got a Gardner Minshew, you have a Joe Flacco, right? Um, these are all guys as free agents, right? I'm not talking about guys you like trade for. Like I say, if you trade for somebody, you could try to make trades for other guys, like a Jacoby Brissett, right? Um, you could trade for a guy like a Jameis Winston. Those guys still up under contract. Another two guys that everybody been talking about is Kyler Murray and Tua, right? Both of those guys as well, right? Um, what's the upside for those guys? Like I would say that you have more of an idea what those guys are than you have when your quarterback is in your once again that's in your locker room. That's the only thing I'm trying to say is that like the only concern that Atlanta Falcons should have for Michael Penix right now is his health, right? And if that's one of the things where they're like so struggled about because they're not sure they're not getting good sense of what the doctor's saying about what his future is, then I could understand the panic, right? And understand the hesitant to just go down that Michael Penix train, right? But if it's not injury related, I don't understand the hesitancy of letting this guy prove that he can't play in this league and stop trying to replace him with these guys that you have an idea of who they are, right? Um, and they're going to cost you more, and is there's no guarantee that they're going to be franchise guys for you, right? And that's the thing because if it's no guarantee that these guys that you're going to bring into your quarterback room is going to be better than Michael Penix, why would you go down that road? Because of the cost, right? And you have a quarterback that's here right now with the cost in place, where if he pans out, it helps the build of your team more than what you would be considering of bringing in a guy that you're gonna have to pay a lot of money to that you're still not 100% sure. How could you be 100% sure that Malik Willis after 6 starts is your guy and you pay him $30 million? That's a gamble. I don't care what nobody says. That's a gamble. How can you be sure about trading for Anthony Richardson, which was number 4 overall pick, and if you trade for him, you're taking that number 4 overall pick contract with you. It's not worth it, right? I've seen guys talk about the kid out of Chicago, right? Have we ever heard of this kid before this year, right? I haven't. I don't know how good he is or how bad he is, right? They say he has talent. He's the backup for Caleb Williams right now. He's 2-0 in the preseason. And once again, You looking at preseason games and saying like he's the answer, and you don't know if Michael Penix is the answer. I don't understand. I do know this, and I'm going to end the quarterback conversation, is that they have to bring somebody in, right? Because of the uncertainty of Michael Penix's health. But with that caveat, it should be on the table that Michael Penix Jr. is the starter once healthy, because that should be their focus. And eventually, I'm hoping that that's the road that Atlanta Falcons, brass and front office, Kevin Stefanski, get to that point and actually says that, right? Once he's healthy, he's the starter, right? We're bringing in a backup quarterback, a bridge quarterback to help Michael Penix, but a quarterback that you believe can play and win games for you as well, i.e., a Joe Flacco. I know I keep throwing out his name, but he's a guy, in my opinion, that fits what I feel like the Atlanta Falcons should be looking for in a quarterback. Because you have a quarterback, once healthy, you want him to be the starter, not somebody that you want to bring in and you still got to find out if they can play as well. So now you put yourself in a situation where you have two quarterbacks on your roster that you don't know which one could truly be your franchise quarterback. That's the same situation Kevin Stefanski just came from. Why would you do that again? Why would you put yourself in a situation where you're bringing in quarterbacks where you're not 100% sure that this guy you bringing in is your franchise guy, and the guy that you know needs the reps because he only played in 14 games in his career? You got to find out if he can play. So it doesn't make sense to me. And like I said, I'm not the brass. I'm just trying to figure out about the offseason moves and what they should be thinking about. Why would you bring in another quarterback that you're not 100% sure that's going to be your starter when you have a quarterback in the building that you're not 100% sure can be your starter? And you spend money on them. I think that's, if you spend $30 million on a quarterback, right? What's the difference between keeping Kirk Cousins, somebody that you know could win games for you, right? Because we know Kirk Cousins could win games for us, right? He's not, but he only cost the Atlanta Falcons $26 million this year. So why would you go down that road and bring in? I just don't see it. I have to wait to see what the Atlanta Falcons decide to do here. But in my opinion, if you're going to bring in a quarterback that you're not 100% sure is going to be your starter, when you already have a quarterback that's not 100% sure going to be your starter, why would you do that? Bring in a veteran guy that's you're going to be your bridge that you know has starter capabilities that can win games for you, right? I'd drop Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Even a Derek Carr. They're talking about Derek Carr coming out of retirement. I'm not saying that these guys are the future. I'm saying that these guys that you know can win games for you because you want your young quarterback to be the starter once healthy. That's the mindset, in my opinion, that Atlanta Falcons should have when they go quarterbacks. Let's get some of these comments, man. He says, but one thing, though, Recondo Arthur Blank have told the organization you want to win now. Yep. I still think you got to do it the right way. The quarterback just needs to be managed. The game and around the talent around here. Exactly. They do not need a surefire guy. It's because they're thinking Michael Penix Jr. injury prone. Okay. Yeah, like I said, if the injury is the concern, if the injury is concerned, I'm with it all the way. I get it. I understand. And you have to have insurance. That's what you call making yourself have insurance. But you gotta know if he can play. What if he don't get injured anymore? You don't know. Like I just think it's worth the gamble for 1 year, guys. That's what I'm saying. For this year, it's worth the gamble. It's a new regime. I know Arthur Blank wants to win, and I know you don't want to waste no more years of Bijan and all those guys' talent. But man, You have to figure out if Penix Jr. can play football. You need to do this. This is the best bet for the Atlanta Falcons. It's a timing thing. He says most times scouts are looking at quarterback straight talent or can they play in their system. I think that's the wrong way to look at talent. If they can play in your system, you have to see can they play and what they do best. Coaches, in my opinion, should put players in the position to be successful, not to play in your system, right? And if you can't coach that way, if you're a coach that you so tied in that I have to coach my system, I can't coach nothing. You don't need to be a coach because you have to then be tied to like a certain player, a certain guy, a certain way to play, and things like this. You're a football coach, right? This guy's talented. You need to make him play, make it where he can utilize his talents to win you games. And believe it or not, that's what one thing Kevin Stefanski's been able to do with all those different quarterbacks he had because they all different. All the quarterbacks that he coached in Cleveland, none of them the same. So that's why you have to tip your head off to the way he coached because he had to change up the way he coached because of the quarterbacks that he had. Right? He didn't have same kind of. He didn't have all running quarterbacks. He didn't have all pocket passing quarterbacks. Right? He didn't have all quarterbacks with big arms and things like. He had different kinds of quarterbacks, and he was able to be somewhat successful, not 100%, but he was able to win two head coaches of the year awards with although that turnover at quarterback position. So you have to be adaptable. And if you're thinking that you have to play in a certain system and that's the way you have to do it, you're not a good coach. I'm just be honest with you. You're not a good coach because this the way I coach, and you got to be able to do it the way I do it. No, you have to be able to adapt to your talent that you got on your team, and that's the way I look at it. T. Terry says Falcons will be getting a lot of players from Chicago Bears. Backup quarterback Tyson Leggett, nose tackle number 99, DJ Moore, wide receiver, and linebacker 46. So let's stop here and talk about Chicago Bears because that's another rumors out there. Um, DJ Moore is on the trading block. Tremaine Johnson is on the trading block, which brings back to something Ian Cunningham said, in his combine press conference that he said that when they asked him about Caden Ellis, is Caden Ellis somebody you're gonna look at? I think they're gonna let Caden Ellis test the free agency market because he said that's a lot of linebackers out there. Now, trading for guys from the Chicago Bears, which we'll probably have a good relationship there with that team because of Ryan Poles' relationship with Ian Cunningham and Matt Ryan. Um, you would say that's probably could be a pretty good working relationship, for us the two teams. However, the Atlanta Falcons only got 5 picks, right? So unless they're trading future picks, which Ian Cunningham, been adamant that they're not going to, trade away their currency because that's how you look at picks. So I don't know if the Atlanta Falcons trading future picks would be a good idea. So we just have to see. But um, the DJ Moore and Tremaine Johnson, Tremaine definitely would be good gets for the Atlanta Falcons, especially if you end up losing Caden Ellis, right? That would be a huge get for them. So that's one way to look at it. So I do like your where you're going with that. Like I said, Tyson Leggett. Like, have we seen? I haven't seen this guy play. I'm being honest with you. I don't watch Bears preseason games, so I don't know how good he is. Um, and then there's the rumors out there that teams been um, looking in, calling in on him. But so I don't know how good he is. And to me, like I said, I just go back to my quarterback conversation. If you don't know if he can be a starter, if you don't know the guy you got in the building be a starter, why bring two guys in that I guess unless you're just gonna make it an open competition. I think since Tyson to get contract is cheap, I guess it wouldn't be a big deal to do it that way. But I think if you bring in a guy that's got a large contract number, I think that's not the way to go. So Eddie said, for an example, we put Matt Jones in Shanahan's system with a coach that runs it, or put Malik in a Todd Monken system. That's that's their gamble. See, so like I said, you put in Mac Jones, right? So Mac Jones, um, he's a typical West Coast offense quarterback. He is, right? And you have guys like Kyle Shanahan. Had, Kyle Shanahan has had different quarterbacks too. He had a Robert Griffin III. You guys remember that? Of course, that was Mike, not Kyle, but he was on. He was there. He's seen that, right? He don't had Trey Lance. You know, Trey Lance didn't pan out because I don't think Trey Lance got a fair shot, right? That's another guy that could be thrown out. We put it there, but he's a guy. To me, Trey Lance and Malik Willis is the same person in my opinion. I just don't get how Malik Willis so high up on people's radar after 6 starts. So that just weird to me personally, right? The guy got 6 starts in the entire career, and he was in Desmond Ritter draft, right? So just think about how long that he got 6 starts, and people want to pay him $30 million. That is crazy. That's crazy, man. Crazy talk. Um, the problem with MPG is they can't develop into a current regime system. Some think he is not the quarterback for the system or the future, but he will get opportunity. But for how long? Like I said, once again, the whole system thing, if he can play in the league, tell your offense to let him play in the league. Why he got to play in your system like that, right? I mean, what is about the system about giving the ball in the straight zone, some power gap, and bootlegging and play action? What's so difficult about that? That's pretty much what he's going to be doing in the system, right? He has timing. He has anticipation. He throws in anticipation. He does all that stuff already. So I don't understand why they don't think he can play in the system. I don't know. Just don't know. Um, Hunter Factor Chan, respect, stay consistent and healthy. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Um, Team don't give rookie quarterbacks the time to develop if the owner's all about making money. Exactly. This is the problem with the NFL today, right? We just talked about Anthony Richardson, who's 23 years old. They're ready to get rid of him, right? Um, we see the success Sam Darnold has had. We see the success Baker Mayfield had. Teams do not give young quarterbacks chance, and this is to me, it's like one of the worst examples of how most people are already giving up on Mike Penn. We see Louis Riddick, right? Black dude on national TV on ESPN comes out and say Michael Penn is not answering Atlanta after 12 games, right? And he wonder why he don't have a GM job in the NFL. That's ridiculous, man. They even say that. How? How do you know that? Like to have that come out your mouth to say after 12 games, the young quarterback is not answering Atlanta, and you only seen him play 12 games, and he had success. Go back and look at some of his successful games, right? He's not 0-12, right? It's just it don't make any sense. I don't understand these guys' agendas and how they just talk down on young players like that. Um, Guys ain't even had opportunity, man. They had opportunity, and it's sad, and you think about it because these guys dreams like there was a dream they worked they butt off from high school to college. This is their childhood dream to get in, and then to not even get an opportunity to prove themselves. You know, it's crazy, and I get it's money involved and all that, but man, if somebody would have did pay Manning like that when he threw 28 interceptions in his first season, right? Um, but because the guy throw 20, the guy throw 20 interceptions now. The guy throw 15 interceptions, he probably gonna get benched, right? But Peyton Manning threw 28, and he still holds the rookie record for interceptions in the season, right? And if somebody would have given up on him that quick, like we would never knew about Peyton Manning, right? It's ridiculous in my book, and I know this the new way. This is a microwave society. Everybody wants instant grits and stuff like that, but damn, the guy played 12 games, man, and you already ready to throw him out to the wolves. And if it's injury related, I get it. I understand the injury thing, but man, he's going to recover. He had a partial ACL tear, right? Put a brace on both of them knees, just like look like Phillip Rivers out there, and do your thing. That's what you need to do. So I just think it's crazy. Um, I've seen Tyson Leggett play a couple of years ago. He came down from Justin Fields at 8 games for Chicago. He had 17,000 pass yards, 345 TDs in college, broke records. Obviously, the scouts didn't see that. All that stuff you just mentioned, the scouts must didn't see what they seen because I have never heard of him personally, right? And I guess that's my ignorance, and not knowing all the backup quarterbacks in the league like that. But all of a sudden, he's the guy. Okay. Oh, it's Tyler Baggett. That's right, Tyler Baggett. You're correct. Um, he look like a young Matt Ryan. So T Terry sound like you don't gave up on Michael Penix too, because you keep talking about Tyler Baggett, man. You keep talking about him. You're right. It's not about any system, but it's what the staff uses when the quarterback is not winning. He just didn't fit the system like they wanted. Just saying. Okay, I'm tracking. I'm tracking that. I'm tracking all that. All right, let's get off the quarterbacks, guys. I always when we start talking quarterbacks and I start talking this stuff because you know Desmond Ritter got a fair shot, right? We can honestly say Arthur Smith, he came out, he said Desmond Ritter is going to be the guy. He had his fair shot. He started the last 3 games of the season, and then he went pretty much majority of the next season. That's what he did. All right, and you saw his play. It was bad. It wasn't good at all. He was turnover prone. He had 12 interceptions, 12 fumbles, and he had 12 TD. He had a triple double, right? But least, at least, Desmond Ritter had an opportunity to prove himself, right? That's all I'm saying for Michael Penix Jr. Give the kid an opportunity to prove that he can play, right? He has to stay healthy. I understand that, but they have to give the guy, um, they have to give the guy opportunity. Eddie says that dude that played at Shepherd University. Sure, you talking about Baggett? Yeah, man. I have never heard of the kid. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't see all the hype on him. Um, just don't get it. But whatever. Let's go to the next topic, guys. Um, Trades to get draft picks. So this is one of the topics that's been going around for the Ian Cunningham. And he famously talked about how they was able to get draft picks, go from 5 to 11 in their first year with Chicago, right? The question is, how were they able to do that, right? So one method, of course, is to move down in draft, right? So the Atlanta Falcons do not have any first round picks. All right, they got 5 picks. They got a second, a third, a fourth, a sixth, and a seven, right? They don't have a fifth round pick, right? But they got those picks. So, right, they can move down in the draft, right? They can move down in the second round, move down in the third round, and garner more picks, right? The question is, you have to have a really, really good, solid draft board, and you know that you want to find those diamonds in the rough later on in the second round, later on in the third rounds, if you decide to move down to get more picks, right? You know, and you know his whole philosophy is being able to, you know, get more bats at the plate if you do it that way, right? If you because you can strike out more the more people you pick, right? So when you add more of young players, you know, on a controlled salary contract that might pan out for you, you know, that'll be there for 4 years, and you can build your team that way, that helps you, you know, sustain success for a long period of time, right? Because then you can afford to pay some of your best players, because some of your players that you drafted are panning out, and they're still just in year one and year two. So it gives you time to do it this way, especially if you're drafting guys in later rounds. So it sounds good, but you have to really be good at this if you're planning to go down this route and do it this way, because you don't want to miss out on a lot of you know, players that you could potentially get at higher picks, right? I think Kevin Stefanski's talked about, you know, you want to get some exceptions to the rule, but you don't want to have a whole team of players that exception to the rule, right? You want to have some guys that you know can play, because you already seen on the tape, instead of guys that you might have to develop here and develop there and things like that. You know, okay, it is that. So I can say this: there are a lot of Hall of Famers in the fourth and fifth round. There is, right? So um, it's not, you know, beyond the pale to think that you can't find great players in later rounds. You can, but you have to have a really good scouting department, a really good philosophy, what kind of players you're looking for, and then you got to hit on those players. You know, you have to at least be 70-30, 60-40, something like that, when you start to do it this way, right? Because you're not going to have no blue chip guys, because you're not picking high, and you know, in the first and second round. So now you're forcing yourself to be able to make sure you pick sound picks in later rounds. So that's one way that you could actually get more draft picks. You trades, you're gonna do trades, you trade down and stuff like that. You can maybe even trade future next round picks, even though I don't think that's the way he want to go, because he said he want to have keep his picks in, you know, in the shoot, you know, that way. Another way, you know, he could do something that they did with Chicago, and that was actually trade a player, right? And get picks that way. That year they traded Khalil Mack. I think they got a second round pick. So that's how you get an extra second round pick, by trading one of your better players away. You know, Khalil Mack was, you know, a little older, and he was on a big contract, but they knew that their situation, and there was in a, you know, a sort of a rebuild situation. They had no cap space that year. Um, they did not have even have a first round pick that year as well. So they already knew the situation that they was coming in Chicago, which is not the same situation that you know, that Ian Cunningham is coming with Atlanta. Is different, right? But that's the way as well. They could trade a pick. Now, one guy that's been thrown out there, which is interesting, is Kyle Pitts, right? They franchise tag Kyle Pitts. He's on the book, but you know, if they get a offer for a third round pick, second round pick for Kyle Pitts, maybe they might consider. Maybe they thinking that they could find a tight end in this draft, right? Or sign a David Ajoku in free agency, and they picked up an extra draft pick that way. So it's some things to consider. Um, you know, they could do it that way. Maybe even trading a guy like Jesse Bates. I say hell no, but you know, you never know. Maybe they feel like Xavier Wise has came to his own at just one season. Like I said, I disagree, but yeah, I don't know their philosophy. So you know, trading to get draft picks, because if you want to build through the draft, you want to be able to create more draft capital. And Ian Cunningham and Kevin Stefanski have mentioned that they're trying to get more draft picks. So we'll definitely see how this work out. It's going to be interesting to see how to, to play this draft game and see can they actually, garner more draft picks. And if they get two more draft picks, that'll be 7 picks instead of five, right? That's something to work with. So we'll see what they end up doing. They might stay pat, right? Because maybe some of the trade offers that they was looking at is not beneficial, and they decided to stay pat and just take those 5 picks and then work, you know, um, in different ways. So we'll just have to see about um, what this team is trying to do when it comes to trading for draft picks. It been mentioned numerous of times, um, but at the end of the day, they might end up with five. He also said that might just end up with 5 picks. Because you got to have somebody to play with you. When you're making trades, and if you don't have anybody that willing to play fair, you're not going to screw yourself in that manner. So we'll see how this pans out for um, the whole draft pick saga, and see can they garner more draft picks via trades, um, and the methods they might end up using to do it that way. Let's go here to the next topic. Next topic is cuts and restructures, right? So we heard about the Kirk Cousins um, cut that's going to happen on start of the new league year, which is a post June 1 cut. I think Cardell Hodge is the same because his has been announced as well. But when I go out and look at just the cap, it has not changed yet, and Cardell Hodge is still showing up on the book. So I think he's also a post June 1 cut. If that's the case, he garners about over $2 million. So you can add that. You can add the $2 million from Kirk Cousins. You add the $2 million from Cardell Hodge, and that gives you up to about 15 million. Right? They send it like 11 something million now. They get up you to about 15 million with those two cuts. Another name that's been thrown out there potentially being cut is Darnell Mooney. This is interesting on his behalf because the Atlanta Falcons receiver room is barren. They don't have no receivers in there right now on the squad that's reliable, right? They got Casey Washington, that's about it, right? So they don't have guys that's really dependable, besides Drake London. And if they decide to get rid of Darnell Mooney, right? They designate him as a post June 1 cut, they can actually garner about $11 million post June 1 cut, right? They decide to do it a pre June 1, I think it's like 6 million. So 6 million some change. So depending on how they decide to do that, but if they decide to get rid of Darnell Mooney, now you're talking about a big need for the Atlanta Falcons, which which would be a receiver. Now you're thinking about going back to what somebody mentioned earlier when they talked about the Chicago Bears, DJ Moore. Now that DJ Moore trade is looking more, enticing because of your wide receiver room that's not as good at all. So that's definitely something to think about when you're thinking about um, the cuts and restructures. Now, when you talk about restructures, you're going to take guys like a Christian Lindstrom, like a Jake Matthews. We think of restructure last year, so you might want to be hold off on his. He's a little older up in the two. See how long you want to push that down the road. Um, and then Jesse Bates is another guy. AJ Terrell, somebody just got a contract. He could definitely be a guy that you can restructure as well. So those are some of the avenues that they can go around to garner some more cap space because you want to be able to do that, right? And you have to think about your long-term future when you're thinking about your restructure. So you don't want to go too much into the restructure pot, but they're gonna have to do something because right now having $11 million and you're gonna give up probably about $5 million of that to your draft class. And if you're going to more draft picks, that's even more salary that's going to have to go towards those draft picks. So it's important for Atlanta Falcons to make these decisions. And I know they probably had a lot of conversations on it, right? Remember, Darnell Mooney was already released one time by Ian Cunningham with the Chicago Bears, so it's not, you know, it wouldn't be shocking if it happens again with the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm just throwing that out there. So we'll see. Those three guys we already know about. Cordell Hodge, we already know about Kirk Cousins. Darnell Mooney is the other guy for his cuts, and then restructures. It would be some of your guys that's where the real deposit is your um, Chris Lindstrom, your Jesse Bates, your AJ Terrell, your Jake Matthews, right? And you can get up to probably a little bit over $45 million, I think, if you do that, right, with those restructures. Don't quote me on that, but you can get somewhere so you can actually be a player in free agency if you decide to do it that way, right? And then of course, the best way is to get your cap to where you want it is to buy coming up with contracts, re-signing guys, like going ahead and actually dropping that $15 million cap that you had on Kyle Pitts and sign him to a long term deal, right? Sign on Drake London to a long term deal, who's on your books this year for about over 16 million. And if you sign him to a long term deal, you can lower that cap number as well. And then if you really want to get in the re-signing business, you can go ahead and do Bijan Robinson contract as well, right? That's a lot, right? That's going to be lined up with these guys together. But the Atlanta Falcons could definitely do that because you're looking at those three guys, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. If you're looking at those guys as your core, tying them up for a long term right now might not be a bad thing, especially Bijan Robinson because his cap number is only going to go up because he's a spectacular player, and the longer you wait, the more money you got to cash out to a guy like Bijan Robinson. Um, Drake London, the receiver numbers are what they are, right? It's over $30 million. That's just the way it is. That's the going price for receivers these days. George Pickens is going to get his as well. Puka Nacua is going to get his as well. JSN got 2 years left on his contract, but he's going to get his as well. The receiver market is what it is, guys. I mean, Jamar Chase is at 40 million. I don't see Drake, gun that high, but I can definitely see him that $35 million range where CeeDee Lamb's at, somewhere like that. So you have to figure out what they're gonna do with those re-signings of those contracts. But cuts restructures, and then if you decide to get bold this year and start to re-sign some guys, that could be a way that Atlanta Falcons decide to move as well. So those are some of the things that Atlanta Falcons need to think about when we're talking about the direction of off season. Still moving parts to go, and I do believe that they're going to make some more moves before March 9th, before the legal tampering periods decide to take hold. All right, and the last topic of the day will be free agency and draft, right? And this pretty much would in off season, and before they start getting ready for the season. With OTAs April 7th, when the Atlanta Falcons start the OTAs, I can't wait for that. But um, free agency is going to be huge for Atlanta Falcons. Um, in particular, their own free agents, right? They have to figure out their own free agents first, which is going to be something to look at and figure out how they're going to approach that. But guys, like in my opinion, the first free agent I signed back is Bradley Pinion. That's the easy one, right? They can actually, I think he's actually is somebody you can actually put on um, transition tag or something like that. I think that's what it's called, um, and sign him to a $4 or $5 million deal, something like that, right? They could make that happen right away. Get Bradley Pinion in. You need your punter. He was one of the best punters in the league last year, despite our special teams being terrible. But Bradley Pinion, bringing him back to bring back that Liam McCullers here, a long snapper. Bring Bradley Pinion back in. Um, and then bring Zane back as well. I thought he kicked really well for Atlanta Falcons. But that would be my first guy I look at. Then you have to look at the big names, David Amayada, Kate Nellis, and Tyler Algier, right? Those would be the biggest three names you would definitely looking at, consider bringing back into the fold. What the Atlanta Falcons think about those three guys as their own free agents. And then that's when you started going to the free agent pool and try to build some of the things that that you probably need, right? So I'm not 100% sure how this regime, look at free agency. We know the last regime, when they looked at free agency, went after need for the most part. When they looked at free agency, they kind of went and tried to fill some holes in free agency that they knew they had, they was lacking in. And then in the draft, they actually went for best player available, right? That's what was said anyway. So um, free agency is going to be huge for the Atlanta Falcons. Look at their own free agency first. Those four guys I mentioned: Bradley Pinion, Kay Nellis, David Amayada, and Tyler Algier. How do they look at any of those guys and determine if they're going to bring any of those guys back, right? If not, those guys all need to be replaced, right? You're going to need a backup running back. You're going to need another linebacker. You're going to need another defensive tackle that's come in and get the production that David Amayada had. And of course, Kay Nellis led the team in tackles. So you're losing guys that contributed to last year's team, where we thought they was right there. So if you do let those guys go, you have to replace those guys with competent players in their spot. So that's one of the things to look at. And then if you go out and look at the free agency pool, and we'll get into that sometime next week when we get closer to the tampering period, because we'll start talking about some of those free agents guys, and we'll break that down, right? And then last but not least, talking about the draft. Definitely going to get into the draft more and more. This draft is going to be, really, really exciting this time, because you're looking at guys that's not in the first round, guys that you can find that could be difference makers for the Atlanta Falcons, in year one. Guys like we found last year. If you look at guys like Billy Bowman and Xavier Watts, um, man, those guys played outstanding football for the Atlanta Falcons, and they was third, fourth round, fifth round picks, right? Those guys was out there late. So you love to see when you able to find guys like that later in rounds, where they actually contributed a lot for the Atlanta Falcons. So that is huge. That is huge, man. So guys, that's my look on the direction Atlanta Falcons should take. This upcoming off season. So we talked about a lot. Um, So, to sum it up, in my opinion, I think the Atlanta Falcons definitely should be looking at this team. And I think that's the reason why Kevin Stefanski took the job, is that this team is not far off, right? It's right there. And they have the ability to make, some correct adjustments to the roster. And, you know, if they can start to build that consistency, they'll have the opportunity. Of course, it's going to come down to the quarterback decisions they make there. Bringing in a quarterback and how they look at their position. What's the status of Michael Penix? How long is it going to take for him to get back on the field? Right, that's going to be huge. Um, the next look is talking about the cuts and restructures. I think we should hear more about that before March 9th time frame, before March 11th, which is the beginning of the start of the new league year. Um, do they get any contracts done with any of these guys that we think they're thinking about doing long term deals with? And then looking at free agency and the draft is going to be huge. So there you have it, guys. Definitely want to hear your opinion about all these things we talked about today. I think it's huge, the direction Atlanta Falcons should be going on. All right, the rest of the offseason is pretty much is going to be about free agency, the draft, And we're going to get really heavily into those two things here coming up in the next couple of videos. So be on the lookout for that, for draft prospects. The combine is going on right now. So we'll definitely get more into it when we talk about draft prospects. Um, look out for free agencies, because free agencies go first, right, before the draft. So we'll get talk about free agency. Um, you know, right now it's kind of weird to talk about it because we only got $11 million. So right now, if you're looking at Atlanta Falcons cap sheet, you're like, well, they're not going to be big players in free agency with that. But I expect the Atlanta Falcons to make more moves, and we'll see what they're able to do. So, guys, with that being said, this is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.